Good evening and welcome to Oakwood Elementary School. My name is Danielle Airy and I am the District's Director for Public Relations, and it is my honor to welcome you here to Oakwood Elementary School. Please do continue to enjoy your dinner. Hopefully you have your entree and you are now able to begin to enjoy that. So please continue to eat, and I know our fantastic student servers are doing a wonderful job walking around and serving you. Let's give them a round of applause. And of course, our fantastic administration here at Oakwood Elementary. I'm going to ask that they stand so we can recognize them. Principal, Mr. Sean Dogood. Assistant Principal, Mrs. Stacy Bagwell. And we thank them so much for hosting us here this evening. And I must say, Mr. Dogood and Mrs. Bagwell, I have never been more proud to be an Oakwood Raider myself. It looks fantastic in here, and I know that you had a wonderful PTSO board that helped to put all this together. So a round of applause for them as well. We certainly appreciate all the work that went into this evening, and we have a fantastic program for you this evening. As you all know, we do have some of our district legislators who have joined us this evening, and we're going to be welcoming them up here in just a moment. I promised I would get through all of our introductions a little slow this evening so they'd have some time to finish up their entree. So I will do my best, and I do have a number of people in the room tonight that I would like to introduce you to and to welcome. So I will go ahead and go through that list and make sure that you know who all of them are. Just for starters, so that you know who our legislators are that you'll be meeting in just a moment, I am going to just introduce them and ask them to just quickly stand and wave before we invite them up here in just a moment. So Representative Paul Boyer. Round of applause. Representative David Livingston. Representative Rick Gray. Representative Phil Lovas. And Representative Martin Quezada. We thank them so much for giving up their time this evening to be here with us. This is the second year that we have hosted one of our parent support organization dinners in conjunction with our community legislative network in order to bring in our legislators, ask them some questions related to education, and make sure, most importantly, that our community, our parents, have a good understanding of who their legislators are and what they stand for, and really what they see for a focus for education for our community. So we think that that is of great value, and we look forward to hearing from them in just a moment. I also want to introduce you to a couple members of our governing board who have joined us this evening. Our president, Mr. Hal Borhauer. And our governing board clerk, Mr. Matt Bullock. Members Mrs. Kathy Kinneck and Mrs. Tracy Livingston were unable to be here this evening, but they do certainly send their regards. So we thank the two of you gentlemen for being here with us tonight. Also have some guests that I'd like to introduce you to who are running, I would say, for the vacant seat on our governing board. We so sadly and unfortunately lost a member of our governing board at the beginning of this year, Mr. Joe McCord, and I have since started a process to fill that vacant seat. And so we have asked those who have submitted an application for our governing board to join us this evening with hopes that you could put a face with a name, so to speak. We have posted all of the applications that they submitted on our district's website. If you click on our governing board page and scroll down, you'll see the 6 of them listed there. We do encourage our community to take some time to go visit that site, read through the applications that are posted, and certainly send us your feedback if you'd like. We'd love to hear from you. We do have an email address that is listed there. If you want to take a moment to read through those candidates and send in your feedback, the collaboration team will certainly be reviewing all of your feedback. So we do have a number of them here with us this evening. I would just like to recognize them. Dr. William Burkew. Mrs. Joan Evans. Mr. James Kistner. Dr. Peter Pingarelli. And Mr. Zachary Stinger. One additional candidate wasn't able to be here with us this evening. That's Ms. Kelly Carbello. Again, you can find information on all of them listed on our governing board website, as well as a timeline for that approval process. So I do encourage you to take a moment, read through that list, and please feel free to send in your feedback. And to our candidates, we thank you very much for being here this evening, and thank you for your time. I'd also like to introduce a number of our district administrators who are here with us this evening. Of course, our superintendent, Dr. Denton Santarelli. Our deputy superintendent, Dr. Heather Cruz. Our chief financial officer, Mr. Ken Hicks. And I believe I did see two of our K-12 administrators here with us this evening, Mr. Steve Savoy and Mr. Bob Keegle. We thank them very much. And of course, I'm sure there is not a table in this room that does not have one of our very fine assistant principals or principals seated at it tonight. We thank them so much for giving up their evening to be here as well, and we thank them for all that they do. So thank you to our principals and assistant principals for being here. Two very special individuals that I also want to introduce for you. I promise I'm wrapping up we're winding down on the introductions. We'll get to the fun part here. But two very special individuals I want to introduce you to. They are two students, actually, presidents of our student body. From Centennial High School, we have Abby. And from Liberty High School, we have Toby. These two young ladies are members of our community legislative network, so they actually lend their voice to the discussions and weigh in on some of the legislative issues right alongside many of the adults in the room. They do a very fine job at it, so ladies, we thank you so very much for joining us this evening. Well, I think that just about does it for our introductions, but I know we have some greetings that we'd like to bring to you on behalf of our governing board, so please allow me to reintroduce to you our governing board president, Mr. Hal Borhauer.
Good evening. On behalf of the governing board, I just want to thank our legislators for attending this evening. Thank you for being here. But more importantly, I think I want to thank the parents in the room that support our schools. What you do is invaluable. There's no way we could run the districts and the schools would be as successful they are without the parent support. So continue to advocate for your students when there's issues. You know my email, it's on the front page. And continue to support our students. And thank you for the service you've given to the students. And administrators, keep up the good work. It's been a good year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borhauer. It is also my pleasure to introduce to you our superintendent, Dr. Denton Santarelli. I know he has some greetings to share with you as well. So, Dr. Santarelli.
Well, thank you very much, Danelle, and thank you for being here. And I know you didn't come to hear me speak, but also my personal thanks to all of you. You know, we're very serious here in Peoria about what we do. And we're serious because of the students that we provide service to each and every day. And we can't do it alone. We know without a doubt that strong schools contribute to strong cities, to strong states, and ultimately to a strong country. In the United States of America, that's been the cornerstone of our success for centuries. And so we're thankful to have the conversation about what's important to us, what's important to the future of our city and our state. And once again, thanks for being here, and I'm sure it'll be an enjoyable evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Santarelli. Well, I want to just give you a couple of housekeeping tips, and then I will go ahead and invite our legislators up here in just a moment. You'll notice that you do have a stack of white cards on your desk and some pens as well. We do have a few questions that were comprised by our community legislative network that I will work through with our legislators who have joined us this evening. However, parents, community members, principals in the audience who are joining us tonight, you do have an opportunity to go ahead and write down a question on that card. Once you do that, you can go ahead and just kind of raise your hand or wave down, and Miguel, who I will have wave in the back of the room over here, he's our intern in the Public Relations Department. He will come by and collect that from you, or one of our other Public Relations staff, Carrie Stack, is over here on the side as well. She can collect that from you. And then Erin Dunsey, our Media Relations Specialist, who is also here and worked very hard to put this event together, they will come by and collect those cards from you. So please be thinking if you'd like, and if you have a question for our legislators, certainly you can jot it down as it comes to mind. We will do our best to get through as many of those as possible. However, I certainly can't make any promises because it is my commitment to you that we will conclude our program this evening by 7:30. I do want to be very respectful of your time and very respectful of our legislators who have given up their evening to be here. So we will do our best to get through as much as possible, but certainly try to get through a majority of them. At this time, I am going to go ahead and invite our legislators who have joined us this evening. If you can make your way up to the front here, and please take a seat where you see your name listed. We'll begin to kind of go through our program. You do see a few other names up here, and some legislators who certainly had wanted to join us this evening did have another conflict come up but sent their regards. So certainly we appreciate that. And gentlemen, as you're taking your seat, I will direct you in front of you. You do have a packet with some information on the Peoria Unified School District. That is for you to take and keep, and certainly we hope you will take a few moments to go through there. You'll notice that there's an invitation for you, and it is to attend our upcoming patron tour. A patron tour is open to anyone in our community, and it's a chance for us to highlight and showcase two of our remarkable schools. The next patron tour is scheduled for Apache Elementary School and Sunrise Mountain High School. So two really of our finer schools, and we're very pleased to be able to take our community on those tours. So if you'd like to join us, we'd certainly love to have you. Well, I'm going to go through and just reintroduce the fine panel that we have assembled here in front of you. So if you would just bear with me one moment while we reintroduce them, and then certainly we'll get to the fun part. Directly here to my left, we do have Paul Boyer. He's the representative from the Legislative District 20, so welcome to you, Mr. Boyer. We also have Representative Rick Gray from Legislative District 21. Next to him, we do have Martine Quezada from District 29, followed by David Livingston. He is our representative from District 22. And last, but most certainly not least, we have Representative Phil Lovas from District 22. So again, gentlemen, I welcome you. I'm going to begin by really asking each of you the same question, and it's my hope that you could just share a little bit with the group that we have here this evening about your vision for education in Arizona. As simple and complex as that is, I'm hoping you can just kind of give us a high-level overview of really what your hopes are for education and what you see for Arizona. If you don't mind, I'll ask you to keep your answers as succinct as possible, because I do have some other much tougher questions to get to for you. So, Mr. Boyer, if you don't mind, I'll begin with you.
Sure. Yeah, I have the fortune or misfortune of going first due to my last name quite a bit. It's actually, I don't know, I mean, I think it's not a difficult question, but there's a lot to it, and I guess more than anything is your job is to navigate all the federal bureaucracy and what the state puts on you, and just making sure that you fulfill the core function, of course, and that's educating our students. I have a priority as far as physical activity goes. I really want to ensure that every student at least has some opportunity, at least once a day, just to have some kind of physical output, because it's shown that test scores, that the output is much better and less behavioral issues. And so I actually have a bill that I'm going to drop this year. I just want to make sure I get all the language right, but just creating a task force to bring all the experts in the same room and put together a recommendation as far as what we should be doing. Now, nobody likes mandates, and I get that, and I'm not doing a mandate this year as far as how many minutes there should be, like, I don't know, 120 minutes a week or something like that. But I at least want to get the discussion going from a panel of experts just on what are the best practices as far as physical activity is concerned. And so I hope I can get your support with that, and look forward to a productive year.
Thank you, Mr. Boyer. Mr. Gray.
Before I get started, I just want to applaud you and Peoria Unified School District. Every event that I come to, at one of your schools or any of your events is always exceptionally done. It's done with excellence, and I think that reflects the leadership that you have from your superintendent on through each one of your schools, including this elementary school. So I just want to applaud you. As a legislator, that comes across, and I've had some interactions with some of the students. I was a member of the Rotary Club, and we had Centennial students who would come every month for the Student of the Month, and that Friday was the day I look forward to the most, because I got to see kids that really made me feel like the future is good. So so that was my contact with PUSD. On a legislative side, I can tell you that I come out of the business world, so I'm much more comfortable with business and economic growth and those type of things. I have taken much more of an interest since this is my second term now, since I've gotten involved, because K-12 is so crucial. And one of the things that I've worked on is trying to pull our Senate and House Republican caucus together to begin to look at a 2020 vision of where we want to be in 2020. And the two issues that we've looked at or are beginning to look at more deeply is our business climate for jobs. What kind of business climate do we want to have, or where do we want to be in 2020? And then K-12 education, because those are so crucial. And one of the things I've worked with Glenn Hammer, the CEO of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce, one of the things that he had said is those are like two sides of the same coin. So I'm in the process. Bill Adams is here. He's introduced me to a few folks that are in the education community. So I am trying to ramp up my understanding, because I think we've got some big issues, and we need to be able to work together on them, find out where we can have some consensus, move forward, make it easier for schools to be more effective. And again, I've talked with, I think, Dr. Santarelli every year that for the last 3 or 4 years, I've had a meeting with him. And again, been encouraged by what PUSD is doing. So I continue to look forward to continuing that process.
Thank you, Representative Gray. And Representative Quezada, while he's pulling that microphone, I will brag for one moment that Representative Quezada is also a graduate from the Peoria Unified School District, so we're quite proud of that. So welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. And again, yes, I'm a graduate of the Peoria School District, and I'm also a former student here at Oakwood Elementary. So I spent my 5th grade year as a Raider, and it's very good to be back. So I'm very happy to be here. I serve as a legislator, and I also serve as a school board member, so I have that additional perspective. I serve as a school board member in the Pendergast School District, which is just south of Peoria. We've got 13 schools and 10,000 students that we service there in Pendergast. And so I get to deal with education a lot more often because of that role as a school board member than I normally would just as a legislator. So my vision for Arizona, to keep it as short as possible, my vision is that we need to have a proper investment in our future. We need to invest in public education if we want to see the results that we're going to get. We need to, and the second part of my vision is accessibility. Our students need to have accessibility to the resources that they need, the programs that they need, the materials that they need, the teachers that they need, that are going to enable them to be prepared to enter the workforce and or to enter higher education as we move forward. So that's really what it boils down to: investment and accessibility to those things.
Thank you, Representative Quezada. Representative Livingston, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Ladies, gentlemen, I would say the vision is a couple of different things. I think your current leadership here in the Peoria is doing a pretty good job. In District 22, that also covers part of Deer Valley and Glendale Elementary and Dysel School District, and they don't do these events. So, I think reaching out to us and allowing us to reach out to you is a big deal. And when we have tough issues happening down on the Capitol, we have those relationships that we can build. So your leadership here has done a really good job with that. Also, for full disclosure, my wife Tracy Livingston is a Peoria board member. So that's the same last name. Yes, she's my wife. She's home sick with the flu tonight. Very sick, so I'm almost happier I'm here. So as far as the vision is concerned, unfortunately, the state budget is still very, very difficult. And the projections for the next couple of years isn't much better. Even though we give over 45% of the money that the state collects back to schools in K-12, the budget's really tough. So that will continue. And we need to keep working on that. I think the long-term vision I have is we need to find ways to reduce the number of public school districts. We have over 200 in the state, and that's just too many. We need bigger, more successful districts that are more efficient. I think directly looking at the kids, I think the vision is we do not graduate enough children out of high school. You look overall, and the numbers of kids that do not make it to a high school graduation, it's just not acceptable. I think that's actually one of the biggest risks. And as we start working on that, the next thing is how do we get more kids into community colleges? And then how do we get kids into more four-year schools? And how do we, enable the military to recruit the kids and give that an option? And not every kid is designed for every one of those. And we have to find ways to get the right kids into those right programs. And if they work hard enough, they can do any of them. But I think we can, be smart and help get them into the right vision, going down the right path. And I think we'll have a lot more success in schools by doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Livingston. Representative Lewis.
Yes, well, thank you to the district for inviting me, and I want to especially follow up on something that Mr. Borhauer said, and that is to thank the parents for coming out today. In an era where apathy reigns, for you to come out and show an interest in your child's education, I think is fantastic. My mother was a high school teacher for 30 years in Ohio, and without a doubt, those parents who actually took the time to get involved with their kids' education, those kids were far and above the other students in terms of their performance. So I want to thank you for doing that. As far as a vision for Arizona goes, I think the one thing we really need to look at, and I will certainly agree with many of the comments that were said here already, but I think the one thing is an overhaul of the school finance system. Quite frankly, I don't think it works for anybody. For the districts, you guys are dependent upon the school facilities board and the money from the state. And when you don't get that, you go out for a bond or an override, and then you make the taxpayers angry because you keep coming back to try to get money. So from the taxpayer standpoint, and I represent some big retirement communities up in LD 22, they're not very happy about that. You're not very happy about that. I've heard some proposals this year for an overhaul of that would fund schools, the 301 money, and also fund more out of the general fund as well, and to take away the ability for bonds and overrides and make that unnecessary. So I think that is some long-term vision for the state that I think would be a good thing. We'll see as the details come out on these plans, but if we could accomplish that, I think that would go a long way toward helping our education system.
Thank you, Representative Lovis, and thank you to all of you. Good stuff so far, right? Well, there's more to come. I should note before we get on to the next question, should any of your fellow parents or community members be missing this evening, note that we are videoing everything from this evening. We do plan to share it with our community, so certainly we'll make sure we push that link out to you and you can pass it on to anyone who does not have it. So we certainly hope that you will, so that more of our community can hear the voices from our legislators. So I thank all of you for that. I'm going to dive right in, a topic that certainly you cannot escape, either throughout the media or it's just synonymous with education these days, and that is Arizona's college and career ready standards. Certainly a topic that I know all of our parents are quite familiar with. We spend a good amount of time sharing with them the good work that we have done around Arizona's college and career ready standards, but I am hoping that you can share with us your thoughts in relation to the standards. Give us some insight as to maybe where you stand. It's certainly an issue that has been in the media under a microscope, however you want to name it. But again, I was hoping we could hear from at least a few of you on that particular issue, and I will open it up to anyone who would like to go ahead and share.
Well, I'll say this, last year at the legislature, I ran for office in 2012. I don't believe this issue came up one time during the campaign. Common Core, as it was called then, I'll just call it Common Core for that. But last year we got a lot of confusing information regarding this, one way or another. I think a lot of people at the legislature were quite frankly uncertain regarding this. I have mixed feelings on it. I like the fact that we're increasing the standards. I think that's a very good thing, but it's going to cost a lot of money, with textbooks, with training, with everything else that's involved in that. So we have to, if we're going down this road, there has to be a commitment for that. I also do, though, have a concern in terms of data collection. I know that's something that a lot of people had an issue with in terms of what's going to happen with that information, and so I'll be continuing to watch that. My kids, the school that they go to has a Common Core curriculum, and so far, though, I can say I haven't had any issues with what I've seen from the work that they've brought home, but I'm continuing to watch it, but so far, so good.
Thank you, Representative Lovas. Representative Livingston?
Yep. Again, I'm a financial advisor, so I really focus on the numbers. I just can't help myself. And we were in budget meetings actually today. And the way the budget starts is the governor proposes her budget, and the House and the Senate proposes their budget, and then we negotiate somewhere in the middle. That's generally just how it works. So what a lot of people don't know is the governor put very little money into core, or whatever we want to call it, in this year's budget. She put in $14 million for overall testing, and that includes Ames and Park and all the other ones, and that won't be enough, especially to implement new testing. So there's wild talk down there of spending more money on testing, and there's wild talk on the other side of eliminating testing, and then everywhere in between. I would not bet on that issue, except for no one's going to be happy, because it's probably going to be somewhere in between. Also on that same subject, there was $9 million additional requested for the Department of Education to improve their computer systems, on top of, I think we gave them $10 million last year, maybe it was 8. We were negotiating on that. And that's just a database system for the whole thing. And that doesn't directly help, I don't think, the school districts. It's more of a downtown thing, unfortunately. And outside of that was it. The governor did not put any more money in. And it is very unlikely that the Senate and the House puts more money in than the governor. It usually goes the other direction. And the third component was charter schools, and specifically going from public schools to charter schools. In some districts, like Cave Creek, converted 4 of their 5 schools. In the governor's budget, she eliminated all the extra money for that in calendar year 15-16. Wasn't stated how, it just eliminated over $1,000 increase per student will be gone. So not to be sad or mean, but it's tough economics still. And the revenue growth in the state is not there, but the demand for higher spending is there, and something has to give. And you'll see that again this year and next year and the year after that. The split on the budget between what the governor proposed and what we're proposing over a 3-year period is $1.3 billion. That 1.3 we have to meet somewhere. So, you know, you can see a lot of stuff in the paper, but those are real numbers, and I'm happy to show, you know, Dent in that and anybody else and the numbers we have during this process, and anybody in the community that wants to get information, I'm happy to sit down and show you the hard numbers. We're spending the money. It just goes to a lot of different places, so no one gets as much as they want.
Thank you, Representative Livingston. Any of our other representatives want to weigh in on the Common Core standards? Representative Quezada.
Yeah, thank you. As far as the Common Core goes, or the Arizona College and Career Ready, whatever you want to call it, it's always going to be Common Core to me. But I think this is an issue that's been unfortunately highly politicized. We've made good guys and bad guys out of this issue, but at the end of the day, what we have is a situation, a testing situation with our kids that simply wasn't working. These new standards, I'm supportive of them. I believe that it's going to be testing our kids on a deeper knowledge of what they're learning in schools, rather than testing them on their ability to fill out a multiple choice test. This is going to get into that deeper knowledge that we need our kids to do. This is going to challenge them to think about these issues. It's going to challenge them to perform better, and at the end of the day, I think these standards are a good thing. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, these new standards are going to need resources as well. We need resources enabled to test these kids. We need resources enabled to get the internet capability to provide these online tests. We need resources for our teachers to be able to be trained on these new standards and how to teach these new standards based on how each district decides to do that. So Common Core is a good thing, despite its highly politicized kind of a situation, but it's going to need some significant resources, and it's going to need some investment on our part as a state. At the end of the day, I do think it will be a good thing, and I've seen the effects already of how, and I know in my school district, of how that teaching is changing the way our students are learning, it's changing the way our students are thinking, and it's ultimately going to change the way that our students are performing.
Thank you. Any of our others?
I'd be more than happy to chip in my comments. As I had referenced earlier, I'm not an education expert, and one of the things that I've talked with some people in the education industry is we at the legislature need you to come up with innovative ideas and communicate that to us. As I look at this situation, as Representative Quesada said, it has been political in the fact that when this bill originally went through, I had and I'm a Republican, so we'll get political here. I'm a Republican. I actually had a Dr. Matt Ladner, who is a conservative, in my office. He used to be at the Goldwater Institute, which I think most people would say is a conservative institution. And he was encouraging me to support the elimination of Ames and the push for Common Core. Now, as we were doing that, I found out that it's been in process for 3 years. So I'm looking at this situation, and all of a sudden it kind of blows up into a huge, huge emotional situation with a lot of passion. And now I understand it. You know, as I've looked a little bit more, I can see, and again, just to explain some of the dynamics, we've got people in our community who are looking at what's going on at the federal level, and they are scared to death because they don't feel like their voice is being heard. And so when you create that kind of fear, you get emotional reaction. I try and set my emotions aside, and I try and look at things, and my view is, as political people, we need to try and make some decisions based on what's good, not just what's political. And we are already going down this road. In fact, I just talked with a guy the other day in my office about it. We are on a big ship, and just like with every big ship, it takes a long time to turn. And so there are people saying, don't go with Common Core. My statement to them is, what do you do? Because you can't just say stop. You have to have some kind of solution. And so I am, again, in that process of saying, what can we do in the situation we're at with the dynamics and the circumstances we have to make sure we move forward in the best way possible for our children and for our taxpayers. Because the bottom line is, we're talking about more than just widgets. If we look at it as, you know, from a business side, if you destroy some widgets, you can just scrap them out and just make some new widgets. But when we're talking education, we're talking about individual lives. And when a child loses in a grade, that is irreplaceable. That year has been spent. So education is one of those things that is so critically valuable because those kids that we're working with are critically valuable. So again, it's something that we need to not just take an emotional reaction to. We need to look at the facts. We are going to have budget issues, as Representative Livingston said. The cost of some of these tests are going to be quite a bit more. So again, we have to look at the big picture. We have to be willing to find all the facts, and hopefully with people who can set aside just a political agenda, be able to say, what can we do in the best interest for our kids as well as for the taxpayers? Because the bottom line is, families can be destroyed when we tax them to the point where they lose their homes, and we have people that are on that edge financially. So it's a complicated situation. It's not easy. And I think, fortunately, we've got some good people down at the legislature and in our communities that we can combine together and hopefully make the best choices possible.
Thank you, Representative Gray. Representative Boyer.
Sure. Yeah, just a few thoughts to follow up on that. So I don't think that anybody on this panel or the legislature would think that our current high school dropout rate is acceptable. I mean, it's way too high. And also that, you know, I hear from the universities all the time that students have to take remedial English, remedial math, and so obviously something isn't gelling. And this isn't with every student, but I'm just talking from a state perspective, what the universities have been saying. And so I believe we do need higher standards. I've been talking to the governor's office, to the state board, to the Department of Ed, and they're all telling me that, well, it's kind of, the numbers are in flux right now as far as the budget is concerned. There's three, as most of you know, there's three components to the new assessment and also the Common Core, whatever we're calling it. There's professional development for teachers, there's technology, and there's also the testing component. Now, just by way of an update, I met with the state board yesterday, and they told me that PARC is not set in stone. They put out a request for information to see if there are other assessments that might do the job. And then from that point, they're going to do a request for proposal, and so they actually put in a bid for whoever they decide to go with. So that's just by way of an update. I'm also under the impression that the Department of Ed has told me that they want a year, to put a year on hold, the rating system for schools not to be included this next year based on the new, whatever we're doing as far as the assessments are concerned, because they're concerned that as we're transitioning, then that might not be a fair representation of where the schools really lie. So that's just by way of an update. And so we're waiting for more information, and when we get it, we'll get it to you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. I know that this issue is of particular significance, importance, especially to our parents. I have a couple questions that have already come in related to Arizona's college and career ready standards. It's much more of a mouthful than saying Common Core, whatever it is that we are going to call it, but I know it's critically important to them. I'm also hearing what I think is a little bit of the same. There's a need for resources, and that's where most of these questions lie, is if we can agree there's a need for resources, what is the solution to get the resources? Maybe you can elaborate just a little bit on what's your role in helping to support that transition to these standards? What's your role in helping to bring the resources that are so badly needed for this implementation? Anyone care, Representative Gray?
Well, I'll throw something out that may be explosive, but I've actually met with, and I don't have all the alphabet soup down, so for you education experts, but Tim Oakley, Deb Duvall, were a couple of them, and I had talked with them about our federal lands. According to the Farm Bureau, Arizona has 13% of our state land is private. 13%. So when we're looking at competition between Arizona and Texas, Texas not only has all these natural resources of gas and oil and the Gulf ports, but they have the majority of their land. And we look at Arizona, there are, and I'm still working on the numbers, but there are millions and millions of dollars going to the federal government because of our lands, ranchers leasing our land, and we get pennies on the dollar. So if we were able to privatize that land, which, again, as we looked at some of the fires that we've had, some of those fires were basically much more severe than what they would have been because those federal lands weren't maintained. The federal government didn't maintain them. And so, in fact, some of the fires, when they got to like the Apache land, where the Apaches maintained their land, the fires died out. So again, this is one of those issues where I am beginning to dig into some more information, but the amount of money that could be coming into education by just having, and I'm not even talking about the Indian reservation, just the BLM, the federal lands that's federally controlled now, if that was in our state control, the money that would be coming in from that would be a huge surge to our education community. And so, I say that could be, that could be explosive because some people have an automatic knee-jerk reaction of, oh, you just want to attack the federal government. But the bottom line is, with our Enabling Act, we've had other states that are east of us that have had their Enabling Act changed, so where they got their land back. But as it's come to our western states, that just hasn't happened. Hawaii got it, Arizona hasn't. So when we're looking, and again, it's being innovative, what resources do we have? That is a huge resource. And again, the money that would be coming in from that, without even raising what ranchers already, are paying, the money that would be coming in from that going to our school system would be huge. And I don't have a total number, But I've got a feeling we wouldn't have to worry about what it costs to test kids if we were able to make that change. And again, we're not asking for anything over and above what other states already have. We're just saying put us on the same equal footing as the rest of the states on our eastern side.
Thank you, Representative Gray. Any of our other representatives? Kate Ware and Representative Boyer.
Yeah, to follow that, another creative way to, I think, fund education is Proposition 105. What that is that's voter protected. And so I have a proposal that will allow voters, you all to decide, so every single voter protected spending to go back on the ballot every 8 years. Now, as most of you know, a third of our budget is voter protected, which is what I'm referring to. A third is statutorily driven or formula funding. And then we manage about 31% is what our nonpartisan budget staff, the JLBC, tells me that we can actually manage. And so all I'm proposing is that give you the opportunity to say, you know what, is it so critical, and this would come up every 8 years, given our current budget situation, is it critical that this particular program should continue to be funded? Because my concern is that quite often it's a low voter turnout to begin with, and also we don't even know if the same voters that initially voted for it are even in Arizona any longer. And so all this does is it gives every Arizonan the opportunity to say, okay, let's continue funding this particular program. So that would be a huge increase right there. This might not be terribly popular on the panel, Martine, given your testimony. Given your testimony in judiciary, I'm also proposing another referral, and that's for clean elections. Now, I think that's misproperly named. It really should be called public money for politicians because that's what it is. They marketed it very well. And so I have a referral that would, instead of going towards funding politicians for their campaigns, it would go into education funding, M&O, maintenance and operation funding directly. And so I direct the state treasurer once a year to put all that money into education M&O, and so that's one more way that I think we can fund education.
Thank you. Representative Livingston.
First of all, I want to agree with both of the gentlemen. Both of Paul's proposals I support. I think they're greatly needed. And Rick's proposal is something I've been working on also. And if you went to the website, American Land Council, ALC.com, I believe also, you can get information about that. That could fix a lot of the funding issues for education. But let's assume that doesn't happen, and let's talk about where we are today without that. Last year, there's a lawsuit going on regarding K-12 inflation. And last year, the legislature, I think, invested $84 million into schools that got divided from that. In the proposal that I was in today, the next 5 years funding that will cost the state $2.9 billion on a $10 billion budget. So the question is, where do we come up with $3 billion? And the only way we could come up with that money is increase taxes. And if we wanted to increase taxes, we can do that, I guess. But that literally means most people in the state of Arizona will see their income taxes double. And if it doubled, and then we would have the money available to pay 100% of the back pay and the current pay on the inflation formula. And I would wager a lot of money that Arizonans would not vote to double the income taxes. So if that doesn't happen, and then we need to come up with alternates on that. In this year's budget, we are proposing that we do fund the inflation because of the lawsuit situation. We actually think the states could win that lawsuit, and this will be the last year of that funding. But just in case it's not, we've had numbers that have been estimated to us. I have it right here. I'm happy to show you folks. $2.9 billion. The state would have to come up in 5 years on a $10 billion budget. So pretty scary numbers for all of us.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Quezada?
Yeah, I think that's the big question. The big question today: where do we get the money? Obviously, we all think that education should be more well-funded, better funded. But where do we get that money? That's the question we wrestle with every day at the legislature, and it's a tough one. I think the answer to that is priorities. You need a legislature that's going to have the right priorities, and is education, public education, going to be one of those priorities? My answer is I don't think it has been. Over the last several years, public education has not been a priority at the legislature. The reason why I would oppose Representative Boyer's proposals is for the same reason. One, you, the voters, have spoken. When you enacted measures like clean elections, like other measures where you've spent money, you've said where your priorities are, where you want that money to go. You've had to do that because the legislature wasn't putting that money there for you. So now if we're going to go back and ask the voters to re-vote on this every couple of years, you're going to ask the voters to trust the legislature again with those priorities. And we've seen where we've ended up with that. Right now we've seen what public education looks like with the level of priorities at the legislature now. So what are the priorities at the legislature? What are we going to fund? The governor just proposed to put $50 million more into the rainy day fund, a rainy day fund that already has, I don't know how much million in it now, 250 million, I believe? 450 million, even better. So we're going to put 50 more million in there. Could public education have gotten a little bit of that? More corporate tax cuts. Do we need to do that? Is that the right priority right now, given our budgetary scenario? The money that we are playing with, are we going to lock it up into performance funding? And I'm sure your teachers will say that you're not a big fan of that performance funding either. But that's been the direction that we've been going, is tying up that money into performance funding. And that's the priority that we've had, instead of investing in some of the other areas that in my opinion, I think we should be prioritizing a lot higher.
Thank you. I want to give Representative Lovas an opportunity on this one, and then Representative Gray, we can come to you.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what Representative Boyer said, I do agree with him on his idea to get rid of clean elections and move the money to education. I think it's a great idea. We certainly, money for politicians compared to money for schools, it's a no-brainer. But I will also agree with Representative Quezada here. It is a matter of priorities. Long term, as I mentioned, I think school finance overhaul is the key. But in the short term, for the next 5 years, it's a matter of priorities. And 80% of our budget is tied up with either education, health and welfare spending, or public safety. Now, we can move money around, a little bit here and there, but it's going to be very tough to increase that drastically in one way or another. The plurality of that is spent on education, but in the short term, really, it is a matter of priorities and what can we do to put that money where it's going to make the most difference. Just this week, I've been lobbied by the Attorney General's office, the Arizona Highway Patrol. We've talked about HERF funds getting increased. All those people want raises, more money to their programs. So, education is competing with every other state agency as well for more money, and it really is a matter of priorities of the legislature in terms of where to put that money.
Thanks, Representative Lovas. And I want to add just quickly here, Representative Gray, touch on something that Representative Lovas said actually quite at the beginning when you talked a little bit about a need for an overhaul on the funding formula. And I know when you talk about being innovative, and a number of you have talked about having to come up with some innovative ideas for funding, we have seen many of our peer school districts do something a little drastic, you might say, and that is they've converted some of their district public schools to charter schools in order to receive more money. As we know through that formula, they do receive more money for doing that. Certainly may seem ideal and like something many of the other district schools should do. Peoria Unified has not gone down that route, but I'm hoping you can weigh in with relation to funding. Is this something that is sustainable?
Can I jump on that? No. And that's why the governor put in a proposal that not this year, but the next cycle in 15-16, she's eliminated it. And I will be shocked if we do not match that. So I personally believe, and we'll see what we vote on this year, but I believe in this year's budget, this will be the last year to be able to do that and receive the extra about $1,000 a kid. And then going into the 15-16 budget and forward, we will allow districts to do that conversion. We just won't pay you anything extra to do it. And I personally think that's what it will go, and I think there's actually a lot of support for that. It started with the governor, and a whole bunch of us have already talked like, yeah, I can sign on to that. That's easy.
Thank you. Representative Gray.
And I agree. And in fact, we were talking with Dr. Santarelli earlier about this. When you look at the chart from JLBC, which is, as Mr. Boyer said, our nonpartisan budget group for the House, for the legislature. When you look at their chart, it's a just rocketing straight up with costs, and the governor's flattens out at 15 because she is assuming that we will legislatively do something to solve that problem. So there's no guarantee. We still have to take that action, otherwise that will have an impact. But one of the things I do want to say that about where we prioritize and what we prioritize, because, this grieves me when I hear this. When you look at what the bulk of our budget goes to, the biggest chunk out of the budget goes to K-12. Now, to me, that's saying that's our top priority. So, and we've got different people that say different things for different reasons, but when I look at it, I look at the fact that we are, as a state, prioritizing our education. And I think that we need to be fair about that. It's just like when we talk about how terrible our schools are. You see that in the news. Oh, we're terrible. And I mean, it's great to push people into saying we need to put more money into them. But the sad part about it is we've got a lot of great schools, and we need to applaud them for what they're doing. And again, as a state, we have a big chunk going to K-12 education. And we, as Representative Lovis said, we've got a lot of things on our plate. To go to transportation, we just had a report on some of the roads out in the rural areas. And there are huge, huge problems that if we don't address them now, which is why we're talking about changing the HERF, which is Highway User Fund money. That's part of that money comes from gas tax. Part of that comes from when you buy your license plate. It goes into what we abbreviate down as HERF, F-U-R-F. We are looking at putting some of that money toward that because if we don't take care of those roads when they need, I mean, we actually haven't taken care of those roads when they needed it, is the bottom line. And we're getting to the point where $1 of repair, if we would have done it early, would have solved it. Now, it's going to cost us $8 or $9. So we're looking at exponential cost growth because we're not maintaining those. And if we put that off more, it's going to have a greater financial impact on us. So when we're trying to make decisions of where we put money in, and again, when you're looking at education and you want money in education, that becomes a singular focus, and I totally understand that. But if you don't realize the full spectrum, it can make us, and I've seen the headlines before, legislators make war on kids. It breaks my heart because there's nobody down there that wants to make war on kids. We're just trying to say, what's the best way to handle our state budget? And if we don't take care of those roads, it will come back to haunt us. And the problem is it'll take more money away from education. So there is a tremendous balance there. But I just want you to know there's nobody down there that doesn't care, and education is the top thing. K-12 is the top thing we spend money on. It is our top priority.
Thank you, Representative. And I think we all, hopefully understand that K-12 education is the largest piece of, unfortunately, a very small pie. And so we'll, do our best to work with the limited resources that we have. I don't want to continue to hammer budget. I have just one last budget-related question. I will ask if you wouldn't mind just keeping your answers to about 30 seconds or so we can move on to some, our parents are asking some just fabulous questions. But could you just maybe spend 15 to 30 seconds and share your thoughts on the governor's proposed budget? Start with Representative Lovis. Would you care to start? We've been calling on you last an awful lot.
Well, I think one thing we learned last year is it's easier just to give her what she wants, and I'll make the time go quicker. I think it's probably more than I would want to spend, but I think compared to last year, it's a walk in the park, and I assume we can probably come to some kind of an agreement with her, and hopefully before June.
Thank you. Representative Livingston.
I was not happy with last year's budget, and I'm not happy with this year's budget. And the reason is I define a balanced budget as having income and expenses the same. And I know I'm kind of weird that way, maybe as a small business owner, but the same. And last year's budget, we're using $400 million from our savings account on this year's funds, and we call that budget balanced. And next year and the year after that, the budget is the same thing. So when we look at our budget that we put out, and we look at the governor's budget for the next 3 years, there's $1.3 billion shortfall. And that's a lot of money that needs to come from somewhere. But we did not balance the budget last year if you look at income versus expenses, just simple as that. And the governor's budget doesn't at all.
Thank you. Representative Quezada.
But the governor has a tough job with limited resources, as we all know. For the most part, the budget's got some good and some bad in it. So I want to highlight the few things that are bad, because I'm going to be negative, Mr. Debbie Downer right now. But the tax on, or it's really ends up being a tax on each of our students, $15 a child for 6 years to pay for that internet broadband installation, I think is a wrong way to go.
So do I.
Because thank you. Because there are many districts that have already done this, my district included. We've already taken the steps using our limited resources to put that in, and now we're going to be having to pay for other districts. So that's the wrong way to go. And the second thing is what the governor has done is she has permanently eliminated the funding formula, which will enact a permanent decrease in public education funding of $230-something million a year. That was an attempt was made to do that last year, and fortunately in those budget negotiations that was negotiated out. But she's putting that in, and what that in effect does is permanently reduce our budget and starts us at a new ground zero, and takes away money that public schools are owed.
Thank you. Representative Gray.
I just want you to see the bipartisanship that we have up here. And just to let you know that a little over 90% of our bills that go through the House are bipartisan. So, yeah, I think the budget is one of those things that we do have to look long-term. I wish we had more money. I'm not overly happy, but it could be worse. I can say that. There were some things I had some serious concerns about. The governor didn't go down that road. So even though I tend to be one of those that I would prefer to have a more conservative revenue projection, the governor tends to be more extravagant in what I would prefer, and then I prefer to look at the possibility of revenue outgo a little bit higher than what she does. But that's only because we've got so much debt. If we end up with higher revenue and we've got extra money coming in, we've got so much debt to pay down that right now we're paying almost $1 million a day in interest. That could make a good impact for schools.
Yep.
Thank you. Representative Boyer.
Yeah, like Rick Gray is saying, I too am concerned a little bit about the governor's rosy budget projections as far as revenues are concerned. That is a concern, in the out years and 3 years from now, and I hope it's 6-7% growth. But I think realistically, and I'm not an economist, but I do think just based on past history, it could be closer to hopefully 4 to 5%. And so based on that, last year's budget, it wasn't a perfect budget. It spent a little bit more than I would have, but not a whole lot more. And right now, I'm actually I'm studying the governor's budget in detail because, of course, we need to triage and focus on the priorities, and that's public safety. Right now, as a lot of you know, we're dealing with the transition from CPS to our new department, or whatever we decide at the legislature it will be, but it will be separate and distinct from the current DES structure right now. And so DPS, I met with DPS today, with the Highway Patrol, and they told me that they're down 129 officers from a few years ago. And they know they've already marked 102 officers, sworn officers, that they know that are going to be retiring by 2016. That's huge. And so I guess to answer your question, I'm triaging, I'm studying the governor's budget right now, and I know a lot of folks always come to me and say, okay, don't cut me, but cut everybody else. and I appreciate that because, of course, everybody doesn't, they want to protect whatever their particular issue area is. But to answer your question, I'm still looking into it.
Thank you. Thanks for the insight from
And if
all
you don't
of us.
mind, let me do a quick follow-up there. On this year's budget that we're in right now, we're halfway done with a year. Revenue averages for the first 2 quarters of this fiscal year up 3.3%, which is great. It's up. Unfortunately, in the budget we passed, we projected a 5.3% increase. So we're already 2% down on this year's budget. And if you ask most economists and you look at the financial markets, and that's my specialty, we've been technically out of a recession for 5 years. It just doesn't feel that way. There's a high probability in the next 5 years we'll be in at least one recession. And we're only having 3.3% growth. So we're already minus 2%. If just think of it this way, if you had to take a 2% pay cut, how would that affect your finances? And that's where the state is today. And unfortunately, in the future budgets, the revenue projections is higher than what we did 5.3. So that's why I'm concerned.
Thank you, Representative Livingston. I'm going to transition because I don't want to continue to belabor the topic of budget. I know we could go on and on about it, but I'm getting question after question about concerns for funding for early childhood education and support for early childhood education, maybe even aside from the funding side of that, and if I can kind of meld all these questions together with regards to that, if you could share a little bit about your thoughts for the significance or the importance for that foundation. We know those beginning years are so critical. Could you share a little bit your thoughts on support for early childhood learning? Representative Quezada.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think early childhood learning is critical. With what we know about the development of the child's brain and what they're able to retain at such early ages, the earlier we get them into a classroom setting, the better. The better they perform once they get into kindergarten, once they get into first grade. We've seen that in my district. We have programs which our own district funds to get students in age 3 and 4 years old into a classroom so that they begin that process. Those students are performing at such a better rate in kindergarten and in first grade when they are in those programs. So it's critical. If we can find a way to fund that, it would be great.
Thank you.
Two quick points on that. Moms and dads, when you have children, you're responsible for those children. Take care of them. And then number 2, public school tax credits. Give to the Peoria School District. Make your donations, take the tax credit, help the district out, help your kids out, get the money in there. It makes a big difference.
Thank you for that. Any others on that? I do want to get to another question we have from a parent. We were really pleased this year as a school district that we were able to place school resource officers now at every single one of our district high schools. So we were just thrilled to be able to do that. Already had them at schools in the city of Peoria, but now have them at all of our schools that reside within the city of Glendale. We do have concerns, of course, always, and as safety of our students continues to be our #1 priority. Parents wanting to know your thoughts on the focus for protecting Arizona schools. This is something that we unfortunately continue to see time and time again, safety concerns and unfortunate situations happening at schools all across the country. Can you weigh in a little bit for us on protecting Arizona schools and how you see that support?
Sure.
Representative Boyer.
Yeah, so last year in the budget, and I've got it right here if anybody wants to see it, we did include $3.6 million in addition for school safety from last year's budget. And I think that any school that wants a school resource officer should have one. And as far as the funding for it, like I had a few proposals earlier that I think might help out. But if in lieu of that, I still think that we should find a way to, again, any school that wants one, I think they should have a school resource officer.
Thank you. Any others care to weigh in on school safety? Representative Quezada.
Yeah, SROs are great. We've got some of them in my home district as well, and they're great additions to our campus. And they create a better relationship between law enforcement and the community that they serve. They're a great addition. Do they work for every district? No. Some districts like them. Some districts they work well. Some districts they don't. So if that district wishes to use them, I think they should be able to as well. I think the bigger question, and this is where it gets political, but I think the bigger question here is we need to have that serious conversation about gun control in our legislature. We need to have those discussions because right now we wouldn't need a lot of this extra protection in the schools if it weren't so easy for people to get their hands on a gun. And unfortunately, a lot of these situations that we're seeing across the nation in schools and movie theaters are because people who shouldn't have guns are getting access to guns. And that's a problem that we do need to deal with.
Thank you.
I would jump on that. I don't think guns kill, people kill. I think you need to be responsible if you own a gun like I do. And you need to train, and you need to take classes, and it's a big responsibility if you carry. and you need to meet that responsibility. Going back to the police officers, I think actually having full-fledged police officers in schools are needed, but I think it's a very inefficient way to pay for it, and the affordability is an issue to me. The need is there. So I think a better way of doing that is using retired police officers, retired military, sheriff potsies, citizen volunteers. And I think what we could do is set up community-based teams to do that and actually have more coverage at a substantial cheaper amount. And I think, if you had more bodies doing that job, I think it would be important. I think it is very critical to maintain that good relationship with the police departments. And I think they need to be visiting and driving by the schools. And, if there's a posse team that's associated with the school, the local beat cop needs to be meeting with them and knowing them. But I think it's a much more efficient way of spending school districts' money and allowing them to have that money to put back into the school rooms themselves.
Thank you.
And I would just follow up on Representative Livingston's comments. I do agree with him on his gun control comment, or lack thereof, and then also the need for retired peace officers. I think that is a great idea. But I think it's in a way, it's a sad indictment on our society. When I was in school, we would do tornado drills in Ohio. But my daughter, their school, she's 4 years old, their preschool, they're doing drills in case a bad guy comes with a gun to their school. And it's just a sign of the times we live in, unfortunately. But these are issues that they're going to grapple with every day.
Thank you. Peoria Unified School District has something that I think we're quite proud of, and I heard a couple of you mention it, so I do feel a little inclined to bring it up. But we're very proud that we have a 94% high school graduation rate. It places us really among the highest in the state and the nation.
Yep.
And as I said, we're quite proud of that, and I'm seeing this as a little bit of a segue, hoping that you can lend your thoughts on K-12 education and the economic impact that it has in our community, in particular maybe in the West Valley.
Well, I'll jump in there just to have somebody to talk on that. I was fortunate to be able to go to Jeb Bush's summit on education, and it was amazing to me the number of CEOs, and he had some major CEOs that did a little forum, and their need for qualified, educated workforce. And so, having, and then I'll echo too what Glenn Hammer had said with, our economic growth and good education system is two sides of the same coin. It is critical. We do have some things that I think are going well in the West Valley. Peoria School District is one of those. West Mech is another one where, and as a West Valley caucus, we've been able to tour the airport facility down there. We've got a lot of pluses going for us. We need to continue to work on those. I personally think the West Valley is going to be the area that has the most growth in the coming years for Arizona, which over the years they're projecting our population to double. So we're going to have a lot of growth, and it is going to be in the west side. So again, to me, it's obvious that education and having that skilled workforce is critical, absolutely critical.
Thank you. Also want to just ask, and I do have just a couple more questions, and then again, we do want to be respectful of everyone's time and be sure we get you out of here as promised. But we know that 80% of families choose district public schools. In fact, this room is comprised of parents who made a choice to be in our schools because they do have that choice to make. And I'm wondering what you could say to our audience and to our parents to assure them that your votes or your decisions this session will reflect support for improved public district education, if you can.
I'm happy to jump on that because I have a different view on that, especially with my wife being a year school board member. I actually believe that 80% number is going to go down forever. It will never be back to where it was, and it wouldn't surprise me 20 years from now if it's 50%. But the population of the school districts will stay about the same because of population growth. School choice is here to stay. Arizona is the #1 state for school choice. I passed a bill in committee last week for Foundation of Blind Children, allowing parents that have blind children to go directly into a specialty school and get the STO scholarship and not have to go to a public school. And I think you will see those type of things continuing. And I say that, not saying that public schools are bad at all. I'm just saying the more competition, the more choices parents have to put their children in the most appropriate school that teaches us whatever way they think is best for their children. If you have somebody that's musically inclined and they can go to a school that they spend half their time doing music and the other half doing rest, they probably should do that. And I don't know if public schools can do that. Same thing if it's computer-based or whatever. So I think you could see more and more specialty schools. So the question I think that that's tough for school districts or schools to look at is how do we develop specialty schools that are cost efficient so we can compete with other schools out there? I think that's the challenge the next 10 years. And it's a very difficult one because it means the models are broken and need to change.
Representative Gray.
I think there's a viable option for both. Now, I'm a strong believer in competition. In fact, I had just gone to a breakfast for National School Choice Week. And in there, I came out of there so thrilled because we had actually Lisa Graham Keegan, who is a Peoria resident, was talking about some of the things that we need to do. One of those is to raise the bar on our educational systems to where we have a higher requirement for what we want our kids to be, which is supposedly what the college and career ready standards are doing. She also talked about how important it is to raise the bar for teachers and make sure that we are going to be the state that anybody that wants to be a teacher is going to want to come to Arizona because the resources are there, the pay is there. I mean, just listening to her was inspiring. That came out of a school choice, charter school environment, but I think that is going to impact the districts as well as the charters. I don't think one is going to replace the other. As that competition grows, obviously with the results that Peoria is getting here, charter schools have competition here. So I don't think it's going to be one or the other. I think that we need to have that competition and that drive again because our kids are too important to have a lackadaisical attitude toward education. So in some of those areas and some of the schools they had were, actually several of them that were represented were in very poor areas. And they were doing an outstanding job with those kids. That's what the focus needs to be, is each child is irreplaceable. Each child needs or deserves to have an A or a B grade school available to them with the best teachers that we can get to man them, who are supported by parents, the system, the state, and whether that's a charter school or a district school, it doesn't matter. What matters is those kids have that opportunity, and I think it'll be available for both.
Representative Quezada, care to weigh in?
You know, as far as motivations for public schools, I know what you can count on from me is I've got the mindset about public schools. I think public schools are what they should have been from the very beginning. There are schools that are owned by you, the people, that are governed by you, the people, and that is serving our kids. These are our children. This is our family that we are serving. These aren't widgets. These aren't schools that are operated for a profit. These aren't schools that are operated for the sake of competition and nothing more. I know in my district, every 101st day, what happens? We get an influx of students, those students with special needs, those students with language difficulties, those students with problems, those students that the charter schools kick out. We get that influx every year on the 101st day. And then those same charter schools celebrate how well they're doing because our students are performing. Well, yeah, they've picked the cream of the crop of all the students. Meanwhile, our public schools, we're educating everyone because they are our children. We take them on, and we take them on willingly and happily, and we educate them. We give them what they need. I think, like Mr. Lovis said earlier, it's kind of a sad reflection on our society that now the number one consideration for a lot of people is what's best for my child. Where can I send my kid so that he gets the best education? What used to be was what's best for our kids, what's best for my community, what's best for my neighborhood. And what was best for our neighborhoods and our communities was the public school. We're here at Oakwood Elementary, the center of this community, the center of this neighborhood, whose doors can open anytime for events just like this, because this is a public setting for your community. These schools, we all need to take ownership of our public schools once again and take pride in our public schools, because in reality, our public schools are doing great things because of that 101st day when we take in everyone that we had before, that they left for the promise of a new iPad at the charter school, and they've come back after they've been kicked out of those charter schools. We take them in, we educate them, and we will continue to do that from this point forward.
Thank you, Representative Quezada. We are just moments away from concluding, and I'm going to float one last question out there, and I'll ask that this is just like the other one that I gave. If you could do about 30 seconds for me, that would be fantastic. You mentioned a few bills that might be bubbling up. I'm wondering if there were any others that you haven't mentioned related to education that you might be able to share that we didn't touch on tonight that you feel might be ready to just leak out there a little for our parents. Just a small group of 100, I'm sure, won't share beyond these walls. Any education-related bills we didn't touch on that
Senator Crandall is working on some major education reform, and it's going to come in different steps. But one of them, what Phil mentioned, was overhauling the funding. He has a proposal that he wants to take the first step this year and then introduce it next year, of actually 100% eliminating school bonding and instead replace it with a state bonding rate, which is the same rate for every household in the state. And it sounds on the surface like a pretty good idea, but as Phil mentioned, Sun City West is in the heart of our district, and they vote, and they don't participate in schools. So if you add a 1% tax or whatever amount to those folks, those age 55 communities, yeah, that may be kind of tough to pass through. But there is some of those things. We are really looking for ways to revamp and redo the funding of the state for education. And there's no one way, there's no easy way to do it.
Thank you. Any others, education-related?
Yes, actually, there's going to be a bill for English language learner, and actually, Representative Quezada and I were a part of a bipartisan group that went up to Utah to look at Imagine Learning and what they're doing with their software, English language learning software, and we were very thrilled. And since I've only got 30 seconds, I won't go into it all, but they've had phenomenal results. And actually, I talked to Connie Whitty here that. You're using it in a couple of your schools, so I have the privilege of sponsoring, but Representative Quezada is co-sponsoring it also. In fact, there's quite a few sponsors on that bill. It's going to be a 3-year pilot program, $12 million a year, and I think that as that goes through, from what we've seen, there was such good results that I think it will then branch out and open up to not only every school student having this opportunity for English language, but also they've got a reading system that helps readers too. So I think that has great potential.
Thank you very much. How about a round of applause for our panel? Gentlemen, on behalf of the Peoria Unified School District, we so appreciate you giving up your evening to be here with us tonight. I think we found it extremely valuable. We are looking forward to sharing your remarks with the rest of our community and those who couldn't be here. Unfortunately, I do have a whole stack of questions we didn't get to tonight, but I promised to the 7:30, I'm sticking to it. I hope you won't mind. I would certainly like the opportunity to email these questions to you. I know you're very busy, but if you do have a few moments that you can respond, I'd like to share your responses to the questions we didn't get to with our audience. So it's my hope that we can do that. I want to once again thank Oakwood Elementary so very much for your hospitality tonight and their PTSO. You were wonderful. And I do want to remind our audience, we provided you with a sheet when you walked in, and it does give all the contact information for our state legislators. I know they welcome hearing from you and your thoughts, especially as it's related to education in the West Valley, in the Peoria Unified School District. Please take an opportunity to reach out to them and share your voice on the things that are of concern to you and what really matters, and that is providing the best possible education for all of our students. So do want to remind you of that. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here with us this evening. I want to remind you of our next parent dinner for our PTSO, and that is scheduled on April the 9th at Skyview Elementary School. So thank you to Skyview for hosting us for that one. With that, we will go ahead and stick to our 7:30 and 30 seconds, and thank all of you very much and wish you a wonderful rest of your evening.